My presentation is about the history of authentic Latin American food and the current state of that food in America today. It's believed that the earliest information we have about Latin American food is from the Mayan civilization. Corn tortillas and bean paste, which is really basically refried beans, but it sounds a lot better than bean paste. Yuck. They were commonly eaten along with wild game and other found items. These people were hunter-gatherers, much like the peoples in Europe at the time. Um, in the 1300s, the Aztecs began to domesticate some of the game birds, like pheasants and turkeys. This was mostly in Mexico. We can also thank these people for chocolate. They're the ones that understood that the cocoa plant was something that could be turned into something as wonderful and delicious as chocolate. It wasn't until the Spaniards arrived in the 1500s that livestock was introduced. This was also the first real introduction of dairy products. There was an influx of cultures, and their spices and things were introduced at the same time, like Caribbean spices, French, West African, Portuguese spices were all introduced at that time. The food we eat in America that we call Mexican food or Hispanic food, it's not authentic for the most part. We don't see people in Mexico City going and eating burritos and Mexican pizzas and taquitos and things like that all that often. Although they do sell things like that in some places, they're mostly regional eaters, meaning that the regional dishes vary, a lot between coastal, inland, and tropical and subtropical places. They eat mostly what they grow and find around there. For instance, people in Juarez eat a lot of vegetables that don't require a lot of water to grow. But that doesn't mean that somebody in the capital of Honduras would do the same, because they have a lot more tropical fruits and vegetables and things like that they can eat. And so where they live has a lot to do with how they eat. Um, Pork, for instance, in the higher elevation, the mountainous areas, the Andes, places like that, is almost unheard of. Where beef along the coast, you don't have those folks don't eat beef because there's nowhere to graze the animals. And again, regional, they don't really do that much importing and exporting. More exporting than importing a lot of times. Chicken and other fowl are pretty common, and by the coasts, of course, they eat a lot of seafood. Excuse me. Latin American people that immigrate to America, they're often confused by our supermarkets. Unless you live in a large city, most all of the shopping is done in smaller markets or tiny little tiendas, uh, small stores, outdoor markets, things like that. And again, whatever's in season, whatever's available, regionally is usually what you end up with. Anything that's brought in from outside is generally priced to the point where, excuse me, where you can't even afford to buy it. Uh, they struggle to find the spices and foods they're used to. Excuse me, when they come to America, there's you know, thank goodness for Latin markets like the one I visited on May 11th. It's a bit of familiarity for folks that need it. Food's a personal thing for all cultures. Having familiar and favorite foods around is important to somebody, their sense of well-being, their sense of balance. Now, there currently, like with the rest of the United States, there's an obesity epidemic amongst Latin American immigrants, and most of that has to do with two things. One is the type of foods they're eating. They're not, excuse me, accustomed to so many processed foods and foods that contain so much sugar. And the other reason is that they're not, many cases, they're not accustomed to having the volume of food available that they have when they come here. Many times there's just so much more availability of food that they have difficulty in being able to control themselves. Um, and it's a problem that's pretty widespread. I have a couple of products here that I found in the Mexican market, but each of these that I found, excuse me, are quite Americanized, and they're the ones that in their own country they would likely not find because they would be eating less processed foods. One are these plantain chips. One would think, well, plantains, they're a fruit. They're like bananas. They've got to be better for you. But if you turn around, if you read the ingredients and the nutrition information, basically it's the same as eating a potato chip. There's no less fat. There's no less salt. There's no more nutrition. There are, again, it's tantamount to eating a potato chip. But again, since they say plantain chips, people think, oh, well, wow, these must be good for you because they're like bananas. So, here, very popular brand amongst Latin Americans in the United States, Zuko. They make lots of different drink mixes. This one is particularly nasty. I tried it and it was horrible. But it's artificially flavored rice, milk, and cinnamon drink mix. And if that sounds good to you, you are probably from Latin America because this is not your usual American sort of mixture of flavors. However, it's very popular amongst them. But if you read the back, this makes 43 servings, and this is about almost all sugar. So, and some artificial flavoring. So again, what might on the surface appear to be something healthy, not at all. This is interesting. This is mayonnaise sold in that market, mayonnaise. It's made exactly like the mayonnaise here, except for it has lime added to it. Lime is very popular in lots of things in Latin American countries that we wouldn't find, our palates wouldn't really accept in America with, such as with potato chips, with corn chips, and with mayonnaise, and other things that again, we wouldn't, as Americans, think went well together. But they eat lime on their fish, they eat lime in their rice, they eat lime on darn near everything. Lime is sort of, in a way, lime is sort of their ketchup. They put it on so many things. And again, it's regional. If you live somewhere in Mexico where there or in any other Latin American country where there's not a lot of limes available, of course you would need a lot of limes, but there are limes available in many places there. So that's, I guess, why they like to put it in their mayo. Yuck. This is available at pretty much any Mexican supermarket. The brand is, at least. The brand is Sidral Mundet, I guess is how you say that. Mundet. I think it must be Mundet. And it's an apple soda. And it's a reduced calorie soda, in theory. The truth is, if you look at the back, it says, there are only 80 calories per serving. However, they have a serving down as 4 ounces. And normal servings of drinks are 8 ounces. And you take 80 times 2, it's 160. Well, that's about the same amount of calories in 8 ounces of Dr. Pepper. So, not really helping you. I'm actually anxious to try this. I think it probably is going to be interesting having an apple flavored soda. Sparkling apple is not something I've ever had before. And, apple as a flavor for someone, in Central South America or Mexico, not a lot of apples growing there. So I would imagine that this, for them, is much like when in America people started drinking lemon lime drinks in the 1910s and 20s. Because unless you lived on the coast of Florida or maybe possibly Louisiana or Mississippi, or if you lived in Hawaii, lemons and limes were not something that you ever got. So I would imagine that for them it's kind of something unusual and something they enjoy as something that's not theirs. And last, what what we've done, this is basically a cupcake with filling, and it has a Mexican, a Hispanic name on it, but if you look on the back, you can see that it's made in Texas. It's got just as much sugar as any other kind of ding dong or Hostess Ho Ho or anything like that, or Twinkie. But it's marketed to Hispanic folks because you can see the cartoon characters on it, and it's in Spanish and everything like that. But the fact is, it's the same thing as the processed stuff we eat here. Not at all good for you. So this is part of the problem. It's part of the reason for the obesity epidemic among Hispanic people. They just don't know any better than to eat this stuff, because obesity is not a problem when you live somewhere where food is more difficult to come by. So this concludes my presentation. I hope that you enjoyed learning a little bit about the way people from Hispanic countries eat, some of the history of what they eat, and some of the challenges they face when they come to America to 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 try to find healthy foods and to be able to eat the way that they're used to eating. Thank you and have a great day.